southeast. Somewhere around 1930, I'm 85 years old now, my grandmother wrapped me up in an old quilt, and she started sharing these beautiful stories with me of how Brother Rabbit lost his tail, why Brother Turtle smiled, so-and-so, so-and-so. There were 15 of them. I asked her where the stories came from. She said it came from my grandmother, and she was an American Indian. And then my grandmother would disappear. She'd disappear with a little white oak basket on her left arm, and she would go out and disappear what she called the dark places. But when she'd come back, that basket would be full of vegetation. My grandmother was very, very good with herbal medicines. I asked her where those came from. She said those came from my grandmother, the same person. It'd be my great-great-grandmother, of course. And then she started sharing her story with me. It seems in the year 1839, right here in Lauderdale County, Alabama, there lived a man called General John Coffee. He was Andrew Jackson's #1 general. He did not like American Indians, just like Jackson. So he decided that he was going to get a jump on the removal. So he started from one end of the county, Lauderdale County, and went to the end with his local militia here. And he started gathering them up. He built a stockade 15 miles east of us over here. And he started putting these folks in there, these American Indians. In the meantime, in an old abandoned house in what my grandmother described as a root cellar, they found 2 young girls hiding there. They were American Indian girls. They were about 16, 17 years old, roughly. But they were Indians, so he carried them down there and put them with the rest of them. He did something a little bit different with this group. He hung little metal tags around their neck. Octagon-shaped brass tags, had the number on one side, U.S. on the other. The 2 young girls were number 59 and number 60. Number 59 was my great-great-grandmother, number 60 was her sister. They walked them from here to the Indian Nations in Oklahoma, what is present-day Oklahoma. And they placed those 2 young girls with the Creek Indians, what is now present-day Muskogee, Oklahoma, because they couldn't understand their language. They turned out to be the Yuchi Indians. My grandmother said number 59 spent a winter there, and one spring morning she slipped away without her sister and started home. It took her roughly somewhere between 4 and 5 years. Number 59 came back. And she didn't come down I-65, folks, in 1839. This is 25 years before the Civil War. She came back through the wilderness. She got back here, and she brought that tag back with her. And she told in later years, I'm going to borrow her words. I don't ever quote indigenous people. I always borrow their words. So I'm going to borrow my great-great-grandmother's words. She said the reason, she said, I brought my tag back with me because after we got out there, we all thought that the Shiny Buttons had changed our name. Shiny Buttons, we always presume, were the Army folks with their brass buttons. She said, so I thought I might need my name when I got back, so I brought my name back with me. Well, that tag has been passed down to me. I'm in possession of her tag. So if you go to Oklahoma today and you go to the archives, you'll find the Choctaw and the Chickasaw and the Creek people have ledgers this thick, but you'll find one probably with dust all over it. And now, I'd like that, about 12 pages. But on page 4, 3 lines down, it'll say Alabama female, 18 years old, number 59, deceased. So she registered in Oklahoma. I have her tag in northwest Alabama. Out of about 50,000 American Indians or more, she's the only one we can prove that ever came back. So, did you just sit and listen to your grandmother and that was it? Yes, but that wasn't it. She was one of the main sources, but there were 2 sources of this story. One of them was a Methodist minister, and I'll share that with you to give you an idea that where the story came from. She got back here somewhere around 1844, somewhere between 1844 and 1845. She met my great-great-grandfather Jonathan Levi Hipp, who was a white man. They couldn't get married, so they did a little simple ceremony because she was not an American citizen, and it was a hanging offense to be an American Indian here in Lauderdale County. They moved up about 12 to 18 miles in this direction right here, and she started practicing those magical medicines of hers. And people started to come to her. A lot of people started to come to her. And in the year 1845, a Methodist minister showed up. His name was Wiley B. Edwards. Not only was he a Methodist minister, he was the top educator here in Lauderdale County at this time. An absolutely brilliant man. But he was suffering. He came to her and she cured him, just like she did a lot of other people. He was so fascinated with her medicines, her journey, her children's stories, everything about her, that he came back for 2 years, from 1845 through 1847. And he came back and interviewed her, and he put it down word by word for over 2 years. And it turned out to be a beautiful, magnificent 168-page journal written about my great-great-grandmother. And I've got the journal. So what I'm going to do with you, folks, I'm going to share with you the first page of the journal and a couple of things on the inside. But one of those things on the inside, I'm going to prove to you within a shadow of a doubt, what kind of fantastic person she was with herbal medicines. So this is the first page of the journal. I, Parson Wiley B. Edwards, take pen in hand in this year of our Lord, 1845, to render a service to Levi Hip, my great-great-grandfather, and his wife Mary. That was the English name they gave her. There has been much sickness in this country this year, I myself suffering terribly. I heard of Miss Mary's cures made from the low places on the creeks and woods lots, so I found Miss Mary. With a salve, she cured a bad case of yellow toes, which makes walking pleasurable again. I also had a disorder of the middle. She's got my middle performing as it should. Though she not be a citizen, I find her to be a person of good character, having sympathy for all that's sick and troubled, and her activity is beyond her sex. And now he describes her, and this is my favorite part. Because all my life, my grandmother say, "Little Tommy, when you get to heaven, you're going to know your great-great-grandmother because she's going to have the most beautiful eyes in heaven." So he describes her. Miss Mary, she be slim and fragile in appearance, black hair and eyes of a color that I have not ever seen. She has learned to speak tolerably well, having a few years back made a very long walk back from the Indian nation, so we're sitting this day on February the 13th in the year of our Lord, 1845, and we're exchanging payments for the riding of her journey. Wiley B. Edwards. Pick out a couple of things. Being a minister, I asked Miss Mary, did she believe in God and did she believe in heaven? She said, yes, it'll be better next time. And now here's her medicine. I don't know whether in your part of the country you have a tree called the willow tree that lives in the bottoms. Okay, great. A lot of people are not familiar with it. Yuchi language is Asi, the willow tree. Miss Mary said she could go down to the low places and find Asi, the willow tree, and she could take the inside bark and roots and boil them together until it becomes a thick yellow tea. You drink it and that will cure the big hurting of the head. 50 years ago, they got the main ingredient of aspirin out of the bark of the willow tree. 160 years ago, my grandmother was curing people's headaches with the same thing. They work, folks. Take my word for them, they work. I could shock you. Tell them I've been to the doctor. Over 38 years ago, I was at a powwow in Lebanon, Tennessee. And I was walking along, and I looked and saw this gentleman carving, and he had Yuchi. His nameplate was Yuchi. When I went running over there and said, I've got Yuchi blood in me, he said, sure you have, Chief. I knew what he was talking about. He was talking about that there was a white man wanting to be an Indian. I knew exactly what he was talking about. And he said, you kind of look like he was born behind the moon to me, fella. And he laughed and went on. So I made about 2 rounds. About the 3rd round, I came back round through there again. He had 3 or 4 people there with him. He says, hey, Chief, come over here just a minute. He said, tell these people about your Yuchi heritage. I walked over and I said, well. He said, by the way, he said, just say something in our language. I said, Agalashan, Oshunaway Nahe. He looked at me, he said, what'd you say? I said, Agalashan, Oshunaway Nahe. He said, where'd you get that? I said, Threats Crossroads, Alabama. He says, no, nobody at Threats Crossroads knows about this. Even the Creek people can't speak this language. It's there's only 6 people in the world can speak the language as we sit here. And I said, well, my grandmother taught me. And he said, what's your favorite medicine? I said, red root. He just sat back. He said, you're kidding me. I said, no. I said, my grandmother taught me whenever we went to a funeral, everything, I was to bathe myself in red root. He said, yes, that's our medicine. What are you doing with it? I said, well, I got all your medicine. I got more than you got, more than likely, from the way you talk. He talked to those 4 people. He says, you people just leave. He goes to the back thing, opens the thing, and there sits this little dark lady in the back. He said, this is my grandmother. He said, speak to her. I said, Agalashan, Oshunaway, Ahe, Golaha. Greetings, it's a good day, grandmother. She looked at me, she says, where did you get that? Same thing. I said, would you like to hear how Sister Hummingbird came to be? She said, yeah, I remember that.